Avatar: The Way of Water is officially out, and here's what I think about the movie. James Cameron took his sweet-ass time to bring this one into the big screen, as the first Avatar came out in 2009. After 13 years, does the sequel actually hold up? That is the question that we're trying to answer today. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's set some ground rules. The first part of this video is not going to contain spoilers, but at the end, we're going to cover some minor details that might get into spoiler territory. You've been warned, let's continue. The original Avatar had some huge shoes to fill, especially considering it was at one point the highest grossing movie of all time, with $2.92 billion at the box office, counting all of the re-releases. Granted, a lot of the internet is pretty divided on whether the first movie actually had substantial value to warrant that much money. Some people equating it to it being Pocahontas in space, with only the visual elements actually carrying it to that level of fame. Now, me personally, I wouldn't take that level of disrespect because I actually liked the first movie, but this one is trying to step it up to an even larger level. So, without any further ado, starting off, do I think this movie was worth the wait? Hell yes. With that said, the film is not perfect, so let's dive deep into The Way of Water. This second installment in the Avatar franchise is one of those rare installments that supersedes everything the first one did on a technical level in all aspects. I mean, Papa, it's a 3-hour movie. How is this going to keep my ADHD brain at attention for over 3 hours of runtime? The answer is an audio-visual spectacle. Personally, I think the way that you enjoy this movie depends on how you watch it. In my case, I saw this one in IMAX 3D, and I think that is the definitive experience on how you should watch this project. I get it, some people don't like 3D glasses, but in this case, it gives you the full depth of immersion that James Cameron wants you to experience. Frankly, it does not matter if you were a fan of the first one, because this one is essentially serving a completely different purpose, which is establishing the lore and focusing on a family-centric film. The biggest thing that this movie has going for it is the fact that the movie watching experience is everything that you could have wished for and more. When it comes to the CGI effects on the actual Na'vi people, the water effects, and the rendering of this entire blue world that we get to see from a completely different lens that is not the forest, more focused on the sea people, is breathtaking. When it comes to the cinematography, the character design, the sets, and the intricate nature of developing an entire different world in full CGI rendering is an undertaking that I have no idea how they actually pulled it through. Small side note in case you're curious, yes, we did have to wait 13 years for the sequel to the first Avatar in the Way of Water, but the upcoming sequels, which I believe at this point is supposed to be 5 movies in total, they have already filmed parts 3 and the beginning of part 4, and part 5 is also on the slate, meaning that we are going to get new Avatar movies for the upcoming 5 years back to back. So if you watch the movie and you're bummed that you're not going to be able to watch something of this caliber again for another decade, you're wrong. It's coming really quick. Thankfully, I can attest to the fact that it's not only the visual prowess of these cinematographers that actually carries this film. The acting and the storytelling and the world building of the entire Na'vi people and of course the Sully family sets this one apart from its predecessor. The question, did this film do an accurate job at casting the rest of the Sully family and building out their world? Hell yes, once again. As we saw from the trailer, Neytiri and Jake Sully are the proud father and mother of 3 beautiful Na'vi children with some adoptions sprinkled in the middle. We'll talk about those at the end. Their job as Torok Makto and the leader of the Na'vi people is to protect the forest tribes and make sure that everybody else from the sky people that is still left in Pandora is completely out. Except for the science people. The nerds are cool. I think this film did a fantastic job immersing us into the family dynamics of the Sully family. That is the absolute core of the film. How these children are able to grow up in this important family, and of course, the issues that happen as soon as you're starting to grow up. While there are a ton of standout performances, I have to commend the work of the children that were cast as the children of Sully and Neytiri. We have Sigourney Weaver playing the role of Kiri. We'll talk about her character in a second. Jamie Flatters plays Netayam, who is the older of the bunch. Britton Dalton plays Loak, which is the middle child of the family and in some cases, the most important person in the entire project. And then finally, we have Trinity Jolie Bliss as Tuck. Within their family structure, Jake Sully has to figure out how to be a father, not just a commander. And I think the acting ability from all of these young actors kind of elevated the fact that we needed to have some balanced screen time to explore all of their journeys. Each one of them has a specific role within the family structure. And eventually, they have to learn, survive, and adapt once they meet these sea tribes. And it's curious to see the intricacies between their relationships once they have to adapt and survive once they meet the sea tribes. So the tone of the movie is family, the characters are good, the CGI is great. Let's talk about the structure. James Cameron's directing and the cinematography for the entire thing is solid the entire way through, but the major gripe that I had with this film was the second act. Not necessarily when it comes to the story, more on the pacing. Remember when I told you that this was a family movie? Yeah, they take that to the extreme. I have to watch it again to get the full feel of it, but we spend what seems like 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes covering family dynamics without any major plot points to interfere. Once the initial setup is done, which is done beautifully, we have this huge chunk of time that we spend learning how the kids are able to react with each other, how they're dealing with the new societal norms that they have to ascribe to with the sea tribes. And of course, setting up the return of a villain that we could have seen from a mile away because we saw him in the trailer as well. So while I think the tone and the themes of family, self-discovery, and figuring out who you are well executed on every basis, the pacing in the middle of the film kind of holds it down a little bit from being an absolute masterpiece that we're going to talk about forever. Overall, I think this movie did what a lot of us didn't think it could do, which is reel us back into a beautifully crafted world of Pandora, establishing new lore to get us hooked for future installments, and also setting up a compelling family story that we could all identify with. I have to reiterate this, on an audio-visual level, it is one of the most beautiful things I have ever laid my eyes on. That's another thing that we haven't even mentioned, the music, the sound effects, and the score. Simon Franglo composed the music for The Way of Water, and it feels like an ethereal deep dive into the watery depths in a way that only Finding Nemo and Lilo and Stitch could give us. It's upbeat, emotional, intense, and in some cases, a beautiful iteration of what I wish the sea would sound like. The biggest thing that stood out to me is the merging of that musical score with the sound effects of the creatures that delve within the depths of Pandora. Whether it be a whale or a dinosaur, it all feels like we're part of this ecosystem and we're going on a ride together with the Sully family as they try to adapt to this new biome. Overall, do I think that you should put your butt in the seat and experience this at the theater? Hell yes. Damn, did we actually go 3 for 3? Yes, but this is why. The audio-visual experience alone, without even taking into account the promising story, is enough to get you to see this on the full screen, especially if you have the availability to watch this on IMAX or even better in IMAX 3D. Yes, it is extremely long with a padded runtime that drags in the middle, but it is not enough to make this fall from one step in the echelon ladder. Story-wise, this movie is better than the first one. Not necessarily when it comes to building out a singular storyline that has a quantifiable beginning and the end. This one focuses on expanding the lore and bringing us into Pandora again in a way that we connect directly with these characters and can't wait to see episodes 3, 4, and 5. The tones were executed successfully. The music is absolutely sensational. But the thing that really surprised me from this movie is that they were able to take kids and obviously teenagers to interact with young adults and of course the characters that we know and love from the first movie to establish a family dynamic that seems personable, identifiable, and I want to see explored in the coming installments. The characters' actions are never fully justified as black or white. There's always a gray area that we have to immerse ourselves in. It met my expectations and it exceeded it in some of the other aspects. And while I don't think that this movie is going to have the financial impact that the first one had, because I think there's a lot of the crowd that's going to be mad that it took over 12 years to actually put this out in theaters again, I think this one is worth it. So with that being said, let's talk about some minor spoilers. Yes, I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds to click away if you haven't seen the movie yet, but before you leave, make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, of course put that notification bell on so you can get instant notice for whenever I go live or whenever I post another video. And if you haven't skirted away by this point, that was your final warning. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Why the hell are we bringing back the Colonel as an avatar? That is the most predictable shit ever. Every single one of the major grunts that we saw in the first movie that companioned that dumbass little Colonel got their own avatar. Is that all that I really had to do to come back from the dead? No, I didn't like it, but again, they succeeded in pulling me back in. Stephen Lang delivers an amazing performance as a villain once again, but I will say this one had a little bit more nuance. Colonel Quaritch large is trying to settle an old debt, and in so learns that he might have a son that is not exactly his, but carries his own DNA. We learn in the first stages of the film that Jack Champion's character of Miles, aka Spider, is the son of the deceased Colonel. So once this cloned Avatar version realizes that his previous self had a child, he grows a little bit attached to him. I just wanted to note that this trope of bringing back an ex-villain in the most magically suspicious types of ways, it kinda needs to end. The idea of having a good villain implies that they have a beginning and an end. So yeah, the villain of the previous movie is probably gonna show up in this one, the next one, and maybe even the fifth one, who knows? However, this does not detract from the fact that that same technique of bringing back somebody that was back from the dead was also executed well in the form of Kiri. You see how I breached that gap from the beginning of the video to the end? Let's get it, it's becoming saucy. As you know by now and may remember from the previous movie, Miss Sigourney Weaver played Dr. Grace Augustine. She was the expert on all things Pandora and the head of the Avatar program in the first movie. She was able to speak Na'vi, she was able to transfer her consciousness to the avatars and teach Jake Sully how to become part of the people. But after she bites the dust in the first movie, we were like, is she actually going to show up again? Because as they performed the ritual in the closing stages of Avatar 1, we saw that she actually communed with Eywa in the bigger ancestral style plane of her nature. As we saw in the ritual that they performed in the later stages of Avatar 1, we saw that she was able to commune with Eywa. And thus, in this installment, Eywa is able to gift Grace Augustine with a child. Yes, they used the Virgin Mary-esque Immaculate Conception. Kiri is essentially a clone of Dr. Grace Augustine. There is a beautiful moment in the movie where she is able to commune with her previous self, and that is one of my favorite moments of the entire project. Kiri is the emotional center of this entire family, as she's not directly a part of the Sully family, but she is adopted into it, and she has a specific journey that differs from the rest of the clan. She is directly connected to Eywa and is able to interact with the world of Pandora in ways that the Sully family can't even begin to comprehend. Again, they start to reel me in with emotional suspense, and they got me, okay? I'm gonna watch the third one. With that being said, the spoilers are done, and I'm gonna give you my final thoughts. I think this movie was worth the price of admission, especially if you're able to watch it on the big screen. It is definitely a must watch. While it is not perfect, it does a solid job bringing us back into the world, and I'm gonna say it right now, it deserves the Tropical Joe seal of approval. On the rating scale, if you are just a casual fan and you're just like, Avatar has a new movie, I might as well watch it, it is nothing less than a B on the rating scale. But to me, who is a junkie for lore and is excited to see visual masterpieces that we are able to see in the coming decade, I'm going to give this one a B+ to maybe even an A-. So with that out of the way, I wanted to open it up to you. What did you think about the movie? Are you going to watch it multiple times? And are you excited to see it again next year? Drop the comments, subscribe to the channel, smile, ride the wave, and I'll see you on the next one.